Good morning, Mr. Gettings. I've got your email and I was looking at this paper again. I wanted to take a few moments and provide some feedback. Um, I started trying to type an email, but I thought, I'll just make a video right quick. Maybe I can point out a few things and kind of walk through a few pieces to make this grade make a little bit more sense. Or maybe I'll discover while we're looking at it that doesn't make sense and we'll address it from there. I do sometimes make mistakes, especially when grading 150 essays out of whack. It happens sometimes. Let's look and see if I think that's true this time. But first, thanks for reaching out and sending me an email. I'm glad that you are taking time to look at the feedback and paying attention to your grades. Those are both good things. So let's look specifically at the assignment and then see what we can decide from there. Okay. So let me share the screen right quick. I'm pretty sure I've got it set up so you only see your work and no one else's, which is good. So I think I can share this right quick. Cool. So you should be seeing the screen, I hope. I want to start not with the one you're questioning, but with the paper before that. All right. So you're asking about paper 3, and I understand that. I want to go back to paper 2 for just a moment. Um, Looking at paper 2, that's a much higher grade, 9.5 out of 10. I can see why you didn't question that one. You've got the feedback to the learner. This feedback to the learner is what you see if you just kind of quickly look at your grades and hit the little box that looks like a chat icon, I suppose we call it now. The word balloon from a comic strip, right? It pops up a little box that pops out and it gives you that feedback to the learner. I actually don't like looking at it by hitting that little bubble because it makes a jumbled mess. I find it better to click on the actual assignment and pull it up that way. You might have done that. I'm not quite sure. I think you have, based on what you've said. So you got the feedback to learner. If you click on the actual completed and graded assignment, that should pop it up so that you see the feedback to learner more or less like this, where it's spaced out, bolded, italics properly, and not just a big jumbly mess. It's easier to read. Also, if you're looking at it that way, you can look at the paper itself, and on the paper itself, you can have access to other notes sometimes. Not a lot of notes to this body, because in this paper, you've done a lot of things right, and I just was in a hurry. I didn't take time to tell you what you've done right. One thing you've done correctly in this paper that I do want to highlight right now is how you handle the titles. So good job. Title handling in MLA and APA can be a little bit finicky. It's easy to get them messed up. So in this paper, nicely done. In this paper too, you're ending on a couple paragraphs. You're ending on the outside voice, right? Which I want to come back to in a few minutes. Wasn't a big problem in that paper, but you are ending on the outside voice. We look at this paragraph here at the top of page 2. You are giving credit for this example from Ubisoft and Assassin's Creed. Cool. And then you're hitting this Trevor Noah piece at the end, and that ends that paragraph. Have some of your own voice throughout the paper, but in this particular instance, in this particular paragraph, there's a lot of outside voice in framing that paragraph, and it's mostly ending on that outside voice, which we will come back to in just a moment. And I'm pretty sure you know, but it's new to me this semester. I'm using rubrics for the first time. Still trying to get those in my workflow, trying to get them in my note flow as well. But if you click on the little rubric window, the sometimes I make notes in these little comment boxes. I don't seem to have in this case. I just had C notes on paper because I thought they were sufficient. Particularly the notes on the paper, I was trying to to that ending instead of notes here through work cited. Right? And you've got access to the note popping out, rolling over there, reading that. You're hanging indentions, italics being used consistently for the term request there. So in every example, you're not putting that in italics. You are getting CNN in italics. You're getting the screen rant into italics properly. The video game titles are in italics. It does look like you are trying to do a good job with the works cited page. There's just a lot of rules and a lot of nitpicky details to kind of pay attention to. Hanging indentions, alphabetical order, those sort of pieces. Need improvement, right? Now that you've had all those notes on that paper, I can hit them a little harder on the next one. So let's flip to the paper you're asking about. Okay. I believe it's in your email. I can't see it on my screen at the moment. That you saw positive notes. And there's some positive notes, absolutely. I love highlighting the European style date. I'm glad you're using that as your date. Honestly, I don't care what style date you're going with in that spot on the paper, as long as there's a date there. European style is nice for me because it makes sense, and because it helps you get in the mind frame of looking for European style dates in the works cited entries. And we absolutely have to have the works cited entries using the European style date, particularly with the abbreviation, right? And so, yeah, beautiful title. Love the idea that you've got a cool title with a nice subtitle to explain the cool title, and the colons between it. Nice. What am I saying here? Here's where there's a weakness that you may have overlooked, but it's worse than the last paper, right? One of the things I just complimented you on is not present in this paper. So if we look at that void space zine, the name of the digital anthology and the name of a website, both website titles like CNN and the name of an anthology like void space zine, both go into italics. In this case, it's both an anthology title and a website title, so it definitely needs to be into italics. Right, so we need to be doing that consistently. And titles are tricky, right? You in the last paper absolutely nailed putting the video games into italics, major literary works. So good. Minor literary works would include digital poem titles, articles, essays, pieces of a larger whole. The larger whole is going into italics, which in this case is void space zine. The smaller pieces of the whole need to be in quotation marks. And so throughout your paper, you're consistently getting that incorrect, which is an MLA problem that could be counted as plagiarism because you're not properly citing your work. You're not properly citing the titles. So that's a potential plagiarism issue. That's a pretty big deal. Didn't fail you for it, because that's not the way my rubric in my this part of the semester I think needs to exist. But it is a pretty big deal that could lead to dire consequences in the future. I need you to be getting that correct. All right, you didn't on this one. It happens, right? Made that note a lot, but that note is so good to you, so there you go. As we're going down through here, give credit to Clark for that, cracking the code. That's a good habit. Like this essay, I don't often take time to just give you all compliments. This is a nice essay. Good job. Right? You're right. It is a good essay. You have said some nice things. You've explained yourself very well. I do always mean to give compliments. I don't always give compliments. Against that workflow and trying to grade 140 papers at pop, and I often get focused on what I need to get fixed by the next paper and make notes about that. I'll take time to say, yeah, it's good stuff here. I do like a lot of it. I like the programs, the cryptic messages. That's cool. Did I point that out? No, I should have. That's a cool idea. That's a cool way to handle that particular piece. That's really applicable. I like it. Look at page 2 here. On page 2, you slip out a third-person point of view. Third-person point of view, the strongest academic voice is required on the assignment. That's going to hurt you. Again, I'm not going to take the time to highlight every first-person point of view slip that you have, but I'm going to highlight a couple of them, kind of point out you did it. Just remind me to take those points off when we're grading. Right. Point of view needs to be fixed in a few spots. But yeah, it's nice. Here you use the you handled the title not only incorrectly, but also inconsistently with how you've done it in the past. So a problem that you're not being consistent, and an MLA problem that you're not being consistent and proper. Hurts. Oh yeah, italicize again. Still wrong, but at least we might be consistent. Cool. Good. You got that. Very nice. I didn't flag that we there because I'm not here to get every point of view. It's just this one just happens to be right under that compliment, so it's jumped out at me. I will highlight it again so you can find it when you next look at it. Looking for patterns, really. Furthermore, as a transition might be just a little bit early in the paper, maybe set it for a little bit further toward the end. Although, furthermore, in conclusion, on the other hand, in traditional literature, some pretty even I think furthermore is just a little early. Nice. Particularly like the in traditional literature, and I like the fact you're not only doing transitions between paragraphs at the end of a paragraph and beginning of a paragraph, but also within the paragraph. So that's nice. So good job. So make up for the citation issues. I don't know, but good job. All right, your works cited entry. Here we go. All right, so this is dragging your grade down. And it drags your grade down a little bit more on this paper than it did the previous paper because you've had more time to get it right. You've had more time to have notes and feedback and to get it right, ask questions and to get it right. Right. Works cited. All right, so works cited doesn't need a colon after it. Doesn't have to be put into bold because it's not into italics. It's a works cited doesn't need to be in bold because it is already centered, and that should be enough. The works cited itself is centered. The two entries you have, which make it works cited plural, which you've done correctly. Your two entries, Huck Finn, which I'm glad you cited, and your Fitzgerald, Great Gatsby, which I'm also glad you cited. Nice. Couple things. Kind of looking at both sets of notes. Couple things. These need to be left aligned, hanging indented. They're not. They're centered. They also need to be in alphabetical order by the first piece of information. Typically, the first piece of information is going to be the last name of the author. So Clark Fitzgerald Twain, alphabetically. It's not. Right? And then we need to have the proper citation in the proper way. You've cited Twain and Fitzgerald absolutely correctly. If you happen to be looking at an 1885 edition of Huck Finn and a 1925 edition of The Great Gatsby, if what you're holding in your hand is a newer version of that book, you need to use the newest copyright date listed for that book. So if you have that book from 1885, sweet, that's cool. Love old books. If you have a 1970s version of that you picked up at a bookstore for $1, that's needs to say 1970. Right? If you read it in high school, then it's probably newer than that because not many high school teachers hand 1885 books to their students. Even if you read in high school several years ago, maybe have a little bit of age on you, perhaps maybe you did high school 10 years ago, maybe you read an 80s edition of that, 1980s edition of that book. Probably not an 1880s edition of that book. And spelling, page numbers, all those things can be impacted. You didn't do exact quotes, so I'm not going to be that worried about the page numbers, those kind of things. But honestly, Huck Finn's been republished several times, and they've changed the ending a couple times. There's a chapter missing in some versions of that book, a very important chapter missing in some versions of that book. So I need to know what we're talking about. Is it really the 1885, or do you read a sanitized version made for high school students by making it less problematic? And some Southern Republican politician's idea of what problematic means. Don't know. Looks like you read the 1885 version. Maybe. I will point out, let me stop the screen share a moment. I will point out That's back to the random book on my desk. It just happens to be Surf Monkeys. Hardback is a library book. This book was originally published in 1992 and then reprinted in 2017. There's no way I'm going to get that to focus in right now because the light's going to get weird, isn't it? Good job, webcam. Anyway, imagine that little fuzzy thing there is 1992 for the original version of it, and then 2017 for the newer version of it. I honestly don't know what changes have been made in this book. I know the art has changed. That is not the 92 art. I know the cover has changed. That is not the 92 cover. Yep. I don't think the rest of it actually has. But just remind you, newest date. Okay, anyway, moving on. Newest date. We also want to make sure that you cite properly. So back to this, the main citation for the main part of your paper. Clark, Joe, period. Correct. Quotation marks, cracking the code of you, capitalized as you have it capitalized, period at the end of that, what you have, close the quotation marks. Then void space zine in italics, which you've done correctly. Volume 4. Correct. VOL period 4, comma. Yes. There's a date. Been trying to give that as feedback in some of the discussion posts. There's a date. Every part of volume 4 was posted on the same date. I need that date. Is it 15 October 2023? So 15 Oct 2023? Maybe. Maybe not. Look it back up. And then voidspacezine.com. Again, a note carried over from last time. We need to apply this time is start the inactive URL after the HTTPS. So starting at the void space zine, run it through all this cracking code view period, break the hyperlink, and then in the period. You've not broken the hyperlink, not started the right place, and then use the access date. Now, since it doesn't look like you found the posted date, the access date becomes important. Once you have a posted date, the access date does not need to be there. So when you fix one problem, it should fix the other problem, but I want to make sure that happens. Right? And again, at this, every time we talk about works cited, I'm going to grade it a little bit more harshly because I'm holding you to a higher standard and moving you toward making sure you can get through college without plagiarizing something. Right? There are a couple pieces of plagiarism that we need to be concerned about. Parenthetical citations, works cited pages being the two big pieces of it. And then, as you pointed out, the unintentional plagiarism. If your next paper for this semester is not going to be bothered by unintentional plagiarism because you're going to change topics and look at something you've not published on before, great. When you get to your literature class and you want to start talking about Call of Duty and you go back to the other paper, you didn't know that. So I'm glad I told you. May not be applicable now, but I hope it does wind up being helpful in the future because I'm not only trying to get you through this semester, but also trying to get you through future semesters, right? Let's look at the order of how I would look at the notes: feedback on paper, and then rubric. But again, I'm trying to establish a workflow for myself. Maybe it's helpful to look at different points for you. Clear point. Yes. The rubric for this paper. This will be basically the same rubric reason for the next two papers, by the way. I'll change the wording a little bit. This is basically the same too. So I need you to have clear your previous two papers back to back. I think you're going to get those 2 points unless you completely write something different than what you've written in the past. So looking good there. Parenthetical citations. That's where your author and page number would be handy if they had authors and page numbers. At this point, the only thing we have parenthetical citations are the title treatments. And then your attribution of the names. You've got the name attributed right. You got the title treatment wrong. So, bam. Then the works cited page. Honestly, that could have been lower. No, there's not a note there, but hope that now makes sense why that could be lower. Look at those two papers back to back. Formatting. Go to formatting. Sweet. The formatting could, I guess, include the works cited page not being on the separate page after the essay concludes at the top of the page, but I already have that as a line item in the works cited, so I don't need to double dip it between formatting and works cited, so I haven't been. Right? It kind of fits between the two. There's some rationales why it could impact both those lines of that rubric, but the way I'm thinking about it right now, and we're probably thinking about the rest of the semester, is that's there. Not here. Spacing there, so that looks good. Nice. I think we'll continue getting those points. Organization looks pretty good overall. A couple spots. Grammar. This is where you're losing some points that I think you can get back fairly quickly. And in fact, all the points you missed, I think you can get back fairly quickly. Taking time to look at it, process it, start trying to apply it to your next paper, I think you'll get it, right? My suggestion is you make a checklist. On that checklist should include the works cited page, parenthetical citation, two separate pieces of checklist, or two separate pieces of the rubric, make two check items with it, right? And also put point of view on there, okay, as a separate piece to look for. And then when you're sitting down and editing that next paper, go through that checklist. After you feel like you've finished that paper, pull that checklist out. Look specifically at the works cited page. Pieces of the works cited page that you did check. Alphabetical order, left hanging indentation. Then look specifically at the parenthetical citations. I tend to leave those toward last, right? And then go through and look at point of view. I might have put point of view earlier. Maybe look at that before you do citations. Figure out who that we represents, right? Can we discuss point of view? I've had a lot of discussions with a lot of students, video, emails. I just don't remember if I've had it with you. Who does that we represent? At any given moment, you are a multitude of possibilities and you're a multitude of realities, right? When you put that I in a sentence, you can't mean all of it. You only mean one aspect or two aspects of it. Right? So if I were putting an I into a paragraph, I am a teacher, I am a son, I am a scout leader, I am a father, I'm a brother, I'm an uncle, a United Methodist, I'm a hobby gamer, I'm an author, I'm a video game lover, I'm a movie lover, I'm a rock and roll fan. I'm a lot of things. Some of those at times conflict with each other. I have to pick which of those things I am in any particular moment, right? I remember when I was teaching high school, a student pulled back to hit me. And I told him to think it through. Break up a fight, pull him away from hitting someone else. He's like, don't hit me. I suggest he think that through. And his response to me is, you're a teacher. You can't do anything to me. It's like, yeah, I'm a teacher. I'm also a biker and a rock and roll fan and a father and a son. And I'm a lot of things. Make sure you hit the teacher. He decided he didn't want to hit me. Just worked out well for both of us, really. Which part of you is true in that moment? If I get punched in the face, I'm not going to be a teacher in that moment, right? I'm going to be something else in that moment. I hope it's a positive thing. As Mike Tyson says, everybody's got a plan to get punched in the face. Don't know how I reacted. I'm glad I never had to find out, quite honestly. That's that I for me, right? So if I'm putting myself in that I into a paper, which of those pieces of me in that I am I really putting in that paper? Because again, hit the right part, right? So if I'm putting an I in a sentence, I need to decide, am I a student? Am I a father? Am I a Christian? Am I a teacher? Am I a biker? Am I a rock and roll? Am I a tuba player? What am I, right? Then use that focusing on which me I meant to decide what nouns, titles, and descriptions really replace that I properly. Same thing for we. If I put that we in there, do I mean we? If I wrote that sentence that you've written, opening new doors for how we experience storytelling, which we do I talk about? The author, the teacher, the lover of literature, the biker, the father, the student. I'm also in college classes myself, right? I'm teaching and I'm taking classes. So I'm a teacher and a student this semester. So if we find other descriptions and titles, opening new doors for how students experience storytelling in the future, great sentence. Opening new doors for how teachers experience storytelling in the future, great sentence. Opening new doors for how writers experience storytelling in the future, great sentence. Opening new doors for how video game players experience new storytelling in the future, great sentence. All of them are completely drastically different sentences that are going to impact the reader in different ways based on which piece of the we we're actually talking about. Right. So as you go through and cleaning up from first person to third person, start looking at that. One aspect that is completely the only time you should really have a first person point of view pronoun in that paper is if it's in a quote, because then you're quoting their first person point of view, not making that part of your narrative and your writing. Right. I did want to take a moment and look back to make sure I didn't take someone else's point of view from a quote and hit you with that as part of your grade. Happens if I'm grading quickly. I'm pretty good at differentiating the two, and easy to find, but sometimes I'm moving quickly. Have that problem. Don't see exact quotes here. Don't see that being the issue here. So I don't think that's the problem. But it's a problem you can fix, right? It's a problem you can fix as a checklist. Um, it looks like you're trying to apply some of the feedback from previous papers to future papers. Sweet. Areas you're just missing, like that works cited, that needs to be attended to, right? Of course, you said put that on a separate page. Typically using a page break neatens up a little bit. Blackboard does compress the essays, change the spacing slightly, changes the size of the font slightly from Microsoft Word to Blackboard. Also collapses the page break sometimes. So I try not to take off on that on the actual grade. I do make notes about it because you need to know that it's not correct and make sure that you're doing it correctly. Then Blackboard's make a mistake. I'm not going to count Blackboard's mistake against you. If you're just slapping them wherever you feel like slapping them, that's a problem that you need to stop. I don't think you are. I'm betting Blackboard has just crunched it up for you. So didn't count that off against you, right? You got some pretty big problems. Some pretty big problems that recur throughout the paper that I think you can fix in this case. Protecting your voice also means not only write the paper in your own language, as you mentioned in the email, which is all good stuff, right? Also make sure you're not ending the paragraph too often on an outside voice. It looks like you're doing that more in the previous paper than you are in this paper, so that's good. It looks like you're trying to take that into account and trying to edit for that. Excellent. Which is why I've got hope, Gettings, that you'll make a really good grade next time. Because you're going to do a couple things. You're going to pay attention to this feedback, I think. You're going to make that checklist I just recommended, because why wouldn't you? You're going to look specifically at your finalized draft and then edit again for point of view. You're going to catch it. If you have questions about it, you're going to let me know. If you find a spot you can't fix the point of view in, what's this sentence really mean? Check it. Then you're going to look at the works cited page. Again, you have questions, you want me to know. You're going to get it right next time. Part of you getting it right next time also has to do with what you're writing about and the types of references that you need to make based on what you're citing. I'm betting you don't use a work as complicated as a digital poem. I'm betting you'll use some nice, dependable ProQuest articles or books, probably ProQuest articles. May have page numbers, may have paragraph numbers, have something you can really sink your teeth into, which is awesome and be easier than this paper is, right? And then you go back through and look at the parenthetical citations. Parenthetical citations are the hardest part of the paper. I often teach works cited first because it's a matching game. Figure out what your citation is, figure out where the rule for that is in the handbook, digital or otherwise, and make them match. Make them match completely. I need you looking at every aspect of this page. So one of the reasons I'm such a stickler for formatting, one, because it's MLA required and it needs to be there, but two, I need you controlling every period on the page so that you're controlling every period on the page. I need you looking at every aspect of the page, every keystroke, so that you're looking at quotation mark, not in italics. Particularly for that. But that's a matching game. If you need help figuring out what the example you need to match is, let me know. If you need help figuring out if you've matched it or not, let me know. And then the parenthetical citations. Parenthetical citations are the hardest part of the paper. And I do suggest you look at them last because you need to be pretty well edited into what does the setup say in a short quote, setup, quote, citation. But the setup, including the name, will change the citation. So if you put getting said in the citation, then you wouldn't have to have the gettings with the page number in the citation itself, the parenthetical citation inside the parentheses itself, right? So because of that negotiation, I love doing it last. It can be tricky sometimes, especially when you're working with weird text like you were in this case. There's not a lot of page numbers on any of these. There's a couple that have page numbers. If you just happened into picking the right one that has a couple page numbers, excellent. Some of the works in that volume have line numbers because they're static poems. Most of them are changing so much every time that your unique read of it will never be a read I can find again, which is fascinating, but pain in the butt to cite. A lot of summarizations on the void space papers, and I expect that. I'm not sure I could do it differently on most of those cases. Cracking code of view, I'm not sure I could put an exact citation in there. But if you're looking at ProQuest, something a little bit easier to do, I'll make it a little bit easier at parenthetical citation. And again, you're going to ask me, I'm going to tell you, and we're going to get it right. And you're going to make the grade. The next paper is also 20 points. The paper after that's also 20 points. So the next two papers are 40 points, the grade. Those also have the presentations attached to them, graded separately, 10 points apiece. So ultimately, 60 points of your semester are still in front of you, even without looking at discussion boards or extra credit projects. You've got 60 points of the semester ahead of you. That's mostly great. As long as you're making good, solid grades there, I think it's going to put your grade where you want it to be. If not, extra credit's available. I don't think you're going to need it. I think you're going to do it with those next two papers. They're the exact same prompt. Just pick another topic and go. Right? Exact same rubric you've already seen. You know where you're going to look for mistakes in that rubric to make sure you're getting as high score possible in the future. It should work out, right? You're going to ask questions. And I like that about you. And if you have any more questions or follow-ups to this, let me know. Otherwise, I look forward to reading your next paper. Have a good day.